Hi, everybody. We're back in our discussion panel, and we're going to talk about how the overall project went and how we felt. And our first subject we're going to talk about is diverse populations and oppression. So, we'd like to kick it off.
So, this is Angie, and in talking about the issues relating to diversity and oppression, I played Janie, the mother, in the role plays. And as the client, being in that role was very different for me. But I guess I'm even more critical of a facilitator because I'm typically the facilitator. And during the role plays, I felt respected. I felt that the facilitators both were very mindful of the differences between Brianne and I, and Brianne was Annie, my daughter. They were very mindful of our differences. They definitely paid attention to our culture. They knew about us and knew about where we were coming from prior to starting both of the methods with us. So in that regard, they were respectful to us as well. So they were very sensitive to our culture and our diversity and what we were going through.
Yeah, I agree. Annie being younger and me kind of like playing her the way that I did, and them knowing that she was getting in trouble and that she was having issues with probation and things like that. At no point was she given any less of a voice through the role plays. She was always, what she said was always just as important as what everybody else said. And I think that's so important that everyone in that kind of situation has a voice, because that's not always the case, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, I felt like I needed to, as a facilitator, I needed to understand their background and, not make any judgments, so I could really immerse myself as a facilitator in what was going on. And knowing that the daughter, Annie, might be more reluctant because she had been judged, and, most likely by maybe the system, because she's gotten in trouble with the law. And the biggest part was to make that open atmosphere for them both to talk, and so that there was a level of comfort.
And as facilitator for Common Grounds, it was important to have mother and daughter understand that, to listen to one another, to hear what's going on with each other, and also to reflect by talking, not asking questions, but just by making sure they can state what they hear from the other person. And if it's not correct, as a facilitator, I was able to ask that question: did you hear it, or do you think it's correct? And if the person felt as though the other person did not hear correctly, then it was good for them to restate their statement. And it was really good to have that open communication, that dialogue, and explain the rules, because the rules was a very big part in that. If someone got upset, if something was triggered, then we could take a time out and get back to what we were doing. So I think overall, the biggest thing was communication when it came to Common Ground and being respectful and understanding what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
So what techniques do you think we used during the role play?
Well, I mean, used the talking papers as a basis to open up, because none of them were talking to each other prior to this. There was a lot of fighting. They weren't really communicating with each other. So it was an exercise in just starting that that open communication with each other without having, to see who was saying what. So that anonymity, that would allow them to open up more. And so I think that papers kind of set the groundwork for them to build trust in the process, because it was pretty scary for them to come into the counseling session for the first time.
Right, and I think coming from mother and daughter, coming from talking papers to Common Ground, they've already established what some of the main points that they need to talk about. And communication and safety were a huge thing for mother and daughter. So once they were able to come in and not just listen, but actually hear what each other is saying, and then that way they can reflect back to that person saying, this is what I heard you say. That way it was a good way to show that I'm really in tune, trying to get in tune with you and pay attention, because we need to communicate. And then the biggest also other concern was the safety. So once they got to that goal, then we were able to break down that goal a little bit further and go further and set up an appointment for next week to give them time to work things out throughout the week.
That's a great.
I agree. I think that talking papers was really important because it showed them that there were, to start with, because it showed them that they were both on two different sides, but it was the same issue, and they were seeing the same things within that issue, just from their different points of view, you know, and to create that kind of, okay, our issues are, we both have an issue with communication, and we're both concerned for safety, and we're both, you know, looking at this this problem almost the same way, just from different sides. It laid a really good basis to work up from.
I felt very respected by the facilitators, and again, being in the role of a parent as the client, I am not going to be receptive, and I have had people not be receptive when I first started doing facilitation a couple of years ago, because of the way that I would explain things and the way I would speak to people. But I felt that both the facilitators really explained things and showed a lot of respect to us, which made me more receptive, and I felt more open to speak and to definitely participate in both of those methods.
And I think that harkens back to, you know, maybe that considering their family dynamics, back to the diversity and oppression, like they were maybe not, you know, in the original marriage before she got divorced, she might not have been able to speak. It might have not been, you know, allowed, like to say what she felt. And so this was probably the first exercise that they could engage in, where like, hey, I'm allowed to speak my mind, and my daughter's allowed to speak hers in a non-threatening environment. So looking, maybe they had a trauma history, and I think making that environment for them was so important.
I agree, and that goes into how the techniques were used in the role play. And again, just that comfort level, and just being receptive to both the facilitators, that was so important. And I think you both handled this very well as facilitators, Scott and Lisa, that you had a lot of patience, especially in the talking papers. I was intentionally really quiet in the beginning, and Lisa was very patient, and made sure that we agreed where papers should be moved together, where there were commonalities. She didn't just simply move them. She would look to us for our opinion. She let us lead the meeting. And Scott, when I asked you questions in the beginning of Common Grounds, you were very patient and took your time. And I didn't feel judged or looked down upon. I felt very comfortable. So that was a technique. I think you both are very personable. And I appreciate that.
Aw, thank you. That's very nice. All right, so, you know, we've spent quite some time together, and things have changed. I can remember the first day, and like just trepidation and like, okay, you know, this is weird, all these folks. And so we've moved through various stages of the group. It was sometimes palpable, you know, we were very unsure. So how do you all feel where we are at as a group? I know I have my, you know, thoughts, but, you know, I'm a big talker too, so go ahead.
I think in the beginning we were all kind of tiptoeing around each other a little bit. It was definitely that pseudo community, like, let's feel this out, let's see who talks first or who says what. And it was definitely evaluating, like, can I say what's on my mind around these people? And you know, through the progression of the last 6 weeks, I think we've definitely, or 7 weeks, I think we've definitely gotten to a community stage. I mean, we're joking, and we're, you know, challenging each other occasionally, and everyone's accepting of what's said, and, you know, we kind of critique ourselves. And I think that that's all got to do with getting to community and that comfort level that we found.
Yeah,
I would agree, definitely. Sorry, Scott. You go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Hey,
All right, thank you. Thank you. Again, I felt so respected. I still do. We work well together, and we definitely shared that leadership towards the end. I think, and like Brandon said in the beginning, we were all kind of nervous. This is our first class. This is, you know, one of my first times dealing with technology, so I'm nervous. I didn't even have a camera for the first meeting. I'm not used to using a camera. So I just feel that we each carried out specific roles and tasks as we moved through, where Brianne and I split off into our own little team for a little bit and worked on the scenario, where Scott and Lisa worked on the PowerPoint. Then we were able to come back together as a group and work together. And we became more open with each other as our frequency of contact continued. And not only did we talk about the project, but we also talked about other projects and offered suggestions and helped each other out in that regard. So I think we definitely got to community, and I'm going to miss you guys when the class is over.
I hope we all get to work together again, but I do feel that we are.
Me too.
So, Scott.
Well, I think we went from pseudo to straight to community. You know, I don't think the chaos or whatever else is in between. I really don't think any of that was in between. I think we got to community a little bit faster than probably maybe other groups, who knows? But I think we worked very, very, you know, well, and especially, you know, adapting to some things, especially I'm home 1 minute, now I'm away, but I'm still able to communicate with you guys. And there was a little bit of issue with my webcam and stuff, but made that correction really quick, really fast. And we just kept right on going. Like, we didn't even skip a beat, you know, and we're always laughing and joking about something. So, but I think I think we're pretty well settled into the community phase.
Yeah, it was a pleasure working with all of you, and I really enjoyed this project.
Yeah,
Likewise.
It was great. Yeah, likewise.
It ended up more fun than scary, which was good.
Yeah, that's always a plus. All right. So I think we've covered it, and I hate to, you know, finish and end this conversation, but it's been wonderful working with all of you.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you.